Hey now, welcome to the Dirty Side of the Track, America's leading Formula One podcast with your hosts, Brian Saperstein and Rob Vale. What's going on, Rob?
Well, what's going on is this is going to be the shortest ever podcast career if you're going to introduce every single podcast like that. And I know we wanted to do an American point of view, but I didn't realize I was signing up for that voice.
Hey, man, I only got one voice. I use it the way I use it. And I'm so excited that we're doing this. Welcome, everybody, to episode 1. Rob, you want to tell people why we're doing this?
Yeah, I mean, it might seem like we're a pair of idiots deciding to launch an F1 podcast right as the season has finished, but... You know, it's been such a great season, and we've spent probably most of every Monday morning catching up on how the race has gone over the weekend, and just decided, didn't we, over Thanksgiving, why aren't we doing a podcast out of this? So seems like perfect timing. We want to kind of do a podcast which is kind of like the US viewpoint. Despite the accent, I am located over here in the US, living out in Connecticut, been here for 5 years now, and yeah, we just wanted to do a podcast and put forward that view of the US point of view and just have some fun. And we realized we don't know what we're doing. And we're going to need to spend some time getting ourselves ready for when the season starts in March and working how all this stuff works.
I'm so excited to do this. I think there's no better example than watching Formula One in America, because you get the Sky Sports feed. And it's on ESPN2 or news, depending on how cool the race is. And you log on to the qualifying and you watch it. And at the second they finish quali, this random lady who I've never seen on ESPN comes on. Thank you for watching ESPN coverage of Formula One, brought to you by Mother's Polish. And then they cut to what I can only assume is a Sports Center from 1983. And I'm like, that's how important Formula One is in the US? Come on, man. It's like one of the fastest growing sports. And whether that's from Netflix or, Drive to Survive, or the fact that, the pandemic has made us all kind of appreciate early morning sports and whatever you can get when you can get it. We're just two guys who love watching Formula One and love talking about it. And it's not going to be overly technical because we're not that smart, but what it's going to be is fun, and we're going to get our kind of perspective. So very excited to launch this with you, Rob.
Yeah, definitely, Brian. I mean, it's interesting kind of coming across here and watching it now, like I say, for the last 5 years from this side of the pond, and it's such an underserved market, as in, I get some of the references because we're watching the Sky Sports stream, and I used to watch Sky Sports back home in the UK, but they're not really even making kind of special dispensation for the US market. They constantly say, well, if you want to catch up on the highlights, then press the red button to watch the highlights. And there's no red button over here.
What's the red button? I don't know what that is. Sky Glass and Sky Q customers. Dude, I just got ESPN. Give me a break.
So you're absolutely right. The coverage isn't exactly kind of tailored for the US market. Not that I'm saying that the commentary would be any different, but we just feel like it's kind of like the poor man's afterthought, where, we're getting it piped through from the UK. And then, like you say, that's the most frustrating thing. The moment it finishes, like sometimes they cut away when the guys haven't even left the podium.
Nope, they're still up there. Yep.
We're done, and we're on to tractor racing from 1953.
I'm not going to say that one day ESPN will pay for rights and need their own announcers, and you and I will be the Crofty and Brundle of the US. I'm not going to say that, but I'm saying it. All right. So with this week concluding the season, and with the season being done with the world's most epic championship, I think it's important that we kind of talk about what happened this race in Abu Dhabi. And we're going to do that as we do every week going forward. We'll review the race. But we got to start at the end today. Got to kind of look at the idea of having our dessert first, because of the just momentous, crazy, controversial finish that occurred. So I thought, for this one, let's kind of do the end first, and then we can work our way through the week to that point. But we can't ignore it for more than a couple minutes. Obviously, we have a new champion, a first-time champion, and Max, his first name, Emilian, his middle name, Verstappen, his last name. And so congratulations to Max. I would just say this before I get your perspective, Rob, but to me, Max was a very worthy champion. I have no problem whatsoever with him being the champion of the year. The 2021 Drivers' Championship going to Max Verstappen, great. I got no problems with that. He deserved it. However, I think Lewis also drove amazing and also deserved it. And so I would have liked to have seen one of them lose it in a more dignified manner than what happened. And so again, I don't hold anything against Max. I don't think it's not the way he wanted to win it. It's not the way anyone wanted to happen. He deserves it. And there's no asterisk there next to his name. He is the champion. But man, whew, for a 7-time champion, a guy who's about to be knighted tomorrow, Sir Lewis Hamilton, he really got a gut punch on that one. I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah, I agree. I mean, if you didn't know anything about this sport and you rocked up and you looked at the headlines, I think Max has won on every stat going this year. He's got the most race wins, the most poles, the most fastest laps, most laps led. I mean, on everything that counts, you can't say he didn't deserve it. And at times when he looked like he was going to pull away throughout the season, and Lewis then pegged him back and showed every part of his 7-time champion's craftsmanship. Yeah, you've got to say Lewis kind of didn't deserve to lose it either. So I'm with you. I probably sat shell shocked for I don't even know how long, because I just couldn't comprehend what I just watched, because it didn't feel like Max had won it the way he would want to win it. Lewis had lost it the way he would never want to lose it. But then any outcome that comes from any kind of appeal, if that still keeps going, there isn't a good winner out of this, because It was neither of their fault. We'll come on to kind of Massey and how he dealt with all of that shortly. But it really wasn't. For once, it wasn't, because we've had Max's elbows out. We've loved the way sometimes he's gone in and shook up the old guard and been aggressive. Okay, and sometimes people think he gets too aggressive. But if it had been him doing a Schumacher on Damon Hill and taking Lewis out to win it, then you'd all gone, oh, you can't do that. But it wasn't. It was just, and I still now can't believe what I watched.
It was made up. I mean, it was made up in my mind. And let me explain what I mean by that. And I haven't watched F1 as long as you have. I watched it a lot when I was younger, and then I had a brief hiatus, and I've long since been back the last handful of years. But to me, you have a rule book, and Charlie Whiting, who was the race director before Massey, everyone loved, but also respected and feared. And Martin Brundle had a great column on Sky Sports, speaking of looking across the pond, people should read about. But to me, it was made up. And here's why. So Nicholas Latifi, who decided, for reasons I do not understand, Nicholas Latifi, if you're listening to this, which you should be, what in the hell were you doing with 6 or 7 laps left to try to make a big push for 14th place in a championship that hadn't been decided? Nothing good comes of that. You finished 13th? Great. You passed a Haas. Bully. There's no points. So to me, the fact that this happened, and then the indecision, which had been the week prior in Saudi Arabia, was just as bad at the Jeddah course when they were making offers on positions for restarts. It, to me, showed an FIA completely inept at using consistency and rules and logic. And the crux of it is, either you unlap all the cars and you give them time to, take all the lapped cars, give them time to unlap, in which point we finish under safety car and Lewis is the champion. Or you leave the cars as it is and restart, which is you would have had 1 lap left like they did. And then it's Max has to pass through 4 or 5 cars in front of him to get to Lewis. I don't think he catches them. And regardless of the blue flags, you can't get out of the way that fast. The only chance he had was if some crazy stuff happened. Christian Horner said it. His words were, honestly, they're in a quicker car than us. We would have had more options, but they're just in a quicker car. And then let's let just 4 cars go by. And then we're going to restart real fast when one guy is on fresh, soft tires and Lewis is on the world's oldest hard tires. I don't know. We'll get more into it. But what did you feel about that kind of crazy safety car situation?
Well, it was even just to heap more bad stuff on how you've described it, is that if it had just been like you said, that would have been bad enough. But they actually published it, because you've got the banner come up on the bottom of the screen. Lapped cars will not be allowed to unlap themselves. Okay, great. And then it was... Race
is over. At that point, the race is over.
Now they are going to be able to unlap themselves. Oh, okay, so that flips the dynamic. Now they are going to unlap. And now, like you say, we're probably going to finish under safety car. And then it comes through, it's, kind of the lap cars are going to be able to unlap themselves, but only the ones that are in between. Oh, and by the way, as soon as you've let them go, despite the rules saying that the safety car will come in the lap following that, now we'll just bring it in straight away and just go for it. And so much was happening that my brain just couldn't compute what I was watching. And then what I will say, put Massey to one side. When that green flag is back on and race is underway, I've got to say massive kudos to both drivers, I think, but to Max in particular. How much his blood, it wasn't just adrenaline, his blood must have actually been liquid Red Bull, because when he throws it up the inside there, okay, he knows that if he probably runs Lewis off the track and they both don't finish, then he's going to be champion. But he's also got to make sure that he hasn't looked like he's just rammed him off, because he's probably going to get disqualified, right? He's also got to make sure that if he does do a lunge, he doesn't damage his own car so much that Lewis can still make it round and he ends up coming off. So let's be honest, the balls on that guy to just throw it down, because he could have waited another couple of corners, but I think he knew he needed to go then. I think Lewis actually left him too much. I think when I watched that replay, I know he's on all the time, he's probably worried about grip, but he's way out on the right-hand side. He's hanging it right out there.
Yeah.
As if he's going to just cut across Max, but there's no way he wins in that scenario, because he cuts across and he takes them both out. Well, now he's still not world champion, but whatever was going through those two at that final lap was just insane. The fact they both stayed on the track and raced to the finishing line, I think, is kind of shows the champion that Lewis was, and I think the champion that Max is going to be as well.
Yeah, two notes I'd add. I completely agree, and agreed on the clarification, the way the FIA kind of launched that whole unlapped cars thing. So nuts. But Daniel Ricciardo, did you see the in-car radio at the end? He said, "I don't know what just happened," as he was pulling it in after on the last lap, the cool down lap. "I don't know what just happened, but I'm really effing happy I had nothing to do with it." Because he's like, what just happened? He's never seen it. No one's ever seen anything where they make up these many cars can go. I mean, there were people, why wouldn't, like, if I'm Sainz, he had cars in front of him and between him and Verstappen. I mean, I know he's not part of the championship, but he's smart enough to get out of the way, but he had a shot at second. Come on now. Why wouldn't you give? Yeah. I mean, in reality, Ferrari should be just as pissed as anyone. So to me, it was a made up decision. Ricciardo's radio kind of proved that out to me, but I'd agree with you. You're right. For Max, who I think has been too aggressive, we can talk about this more because he actually did it on the first lap in turn 5. We'll get to that point in a second. I actually thought it was really clean. I thought the racing on the last lap was the cleanest racing those two have had in a long time. And you could just see it in Lewis's car when he tried to get behind Max and catch up, 45 lap old hard tires or 43 lap old hard tires have no chance against a pair of fresh softs on a Red Bull at that point. So he and I get it. Like, the last thing I'll say on it is I get Mercedes' point on the VSC before that from Antonio's car breaking down and then Latifi's safety car. I get not giving up track position. I know a lot of people are second guessing it, but when it's the VSC, you don't know that there's going to be a safety car later. You got to hold track position because Max could stay out. If you come in first for a fresh set of tires, he stays out. Now you have to pass him. We've all seen he's hard to pass. He will run you off the track, and the FIA does nothing about it. So I don't know if I would change a lot that Mercedes did. I just feel like the FIA hosed it up at the end.
No, I agree. I mean, people are saying, it's Mercedes really dropped the ball. You have to pit Lewis then. I'm like, hang on a minute. The safety car comes out, what was it, like 55? I mean, if that takes all that time to clean up, then, like they kept saying on the commentary, Red Bull are just going to do the opposite of whatever Mercedes do. Exactly. So if Lewis pits, well, Verstappen stays out, because if this finishes under safety car, thanks a lot, Mercedes, just gift wrap the title to Max. And then Mercedes are going to get it with both barrels the next day. And what the hell did you pit Lewis for? I mean, that was a lose-lose for Mercedes, because people are going to criticize them either way. But just kind of going back to that moment when the cars were unleashed for that final lap shootout, there was a moment of commentary that they've been pretty good, the Sky Sports guys, of not using too much UK sport analogies, because they know it's being pumped around the world, right? But he couldn't help it. He got so excited that he referenced Liverpool Arsenal in 1989. He said, we've
I
never
don't
seen
know what
anything
any of that means. As an American guy, I have no effing clue what that means. So tell us what that means, Ross.
I didn't think you would, but actually, as an Arsenal fan, it was quite nice for me to relive that memory. But the parallels were actually pretty cool because essentially Liverpool and Arsenal went on the fixture computer had put the two of them playing each other on the final day of the season. And they went into the final game in a situation where Arsenal had to beat Liverpool by two clear goals. They had to go to Liverpool's stadium and beat them by 2 clear goals. No one had been there and done that for years. Liverpool dominated the 1980s. You didn't go to Liverpool and win by 2 clear goals. So the odds were massively stacked. So really, in this situation, I guess Liverpool are Mercedes and Arsenal are Red Bull. Come the 90th minute of the game's over. It's the worst result possible for Arsenal. They're winning the game 1-0. So they're going to get the kudos of going to Liverpool and actually beating them, but they've lost. Liverpool are going to walk off with the title. And then it happened. I think it was actually something like 92 minutes and 12 seconds on the clock. One last punt forward from the goalkeeper. Arsenal go right down the other end, and akin to Max going past Lewis on that dive onto that corner. That is when I sat there watching both of those things and reliving that moment of time stood still. The guy puts the ball in, makes it 2-0 for Arsenal. They're champions. Max dives down the inside, takes the lead. They're champions. The synergy for me was that in both of those occurrences, it was almost like the entire season that had come before was pointless. I think I read, where is it? We were on that last lap where Max takes Lewis was the 1,297th lap of the season. The previous 1,296 meant nothing. They all meant nothing. I mean, obviously they meant something along the way, but it all came down to this last thing. The same way that kind of Anfield moment, those 37 or 40, sorry, back then it was 42 games that had come before it kind of mean nothing. It all came down to that last kick of the ball that sent the title the one way. And as he said that, I was like, okay, 2 things. A, the American audience can have no clue what you've just spoken about.
I had no idea what they were talking about. I tuned out and thought of monster trucks and then came back.
Yeah, exactly. But the second bit was, ever since that moment in soccer, that's become a defining point. Any championship that's ever been close will always reference back to, and this evokes memories of Liverpool 89, because it became that thing that everyone knew. Where were you when that happened? And it's the yardstick that all close championships were measured by. And that's what I think we just lived through, that for the next 50 years, any championship that's close, when kind of Lewis Jr. and Max Jr. are fighting it out in 20 years and it goes to the wire, it's always going to be referenced back to the Max and Lewis season of 21. Because I think we, as much as we'll debate how crazy it was, that was an iconic moment in F1 right there.
And I would say, just closing this out, I'd say for me, Max is a worthy champion. He drove fantastic all season. He was a little aggressive. I can't say he never put a foot wrong. I feel like he made some mistakes along the way, but the pressure never seemed to get to him. And he's definitely a worthy champion. I think he deserved it. Kudos to him. And I look forward to next year. I just felt it ended in a tremendously terrible way. And for the casual fan who didn't know what was going on, and I had friends here in the Chicago area call me, because I know I love Formula One. I'm like, what the hell just happened? Explain to me why it was so controversial. And did they just make it up? I'm like, yeah, pretty much. And so I spent most of my Sunday or late morning talking about it. But
how much do you put credibility to the rumors that there was whispering in Max's ear that he had external pressures to make it a show, make it finish under race conditions, not make it finish under a safety car?
Zero.
Yeah.
I'm not a conspiracy theorist. Zero. I mean, you're telling me that Nicholas Latifi coordinated his attack on Schumacher. By the way, Mick Schumacher must be laughing a little bit because he pushed Latifi wide, and now his dad and Lewis are still tied at 7. I'm just saying. I mean, it's a hell of a lot of dominoes. If you want to get into conspiracy theories, there's one for you. But to me, no. Latifi crashed. We all knew he was off on the dirty side of the track. And we saw he got his tires dirty, came around the next corner and just spun out straight into the wall. Big crash, or as the Brits would say, a big shunt. And so we knew he was hosed, and his brakes caught fire. The marshal was right to spray the stuff. I don't think they cleaned the track enough personally. In the next lap around, you saw him go over that fire extinguisher material. But again, I don't think Max had any idea they were going to do this. I feel like the FIA, Michael Massey, made a decision. He wanted to finish under racing. It's what he told Toto. They wanted to finish racing, and they made a weird, in my mind, unfortunate and controversial compromise to do that. They should have either just let the cars go in the order they were in, or they should have let all the cars unlap themselves and where they don't finish under racing. So, or sorry, everyone's talking now. They could have red flagged it and made it basically a 2 to 3 lap sprint for the title, which at least would have been more fair, because then Lewis could have put the right tires on, Max could have had fresh tires on, would have been 1-2, and then we would have seen what we would have seen. That would have been better than this. There was no way. This is the worst option of all of them in my mind.
Well, that's the thing. And I wasn't suggesting that Latifi was in on this. I was more that when what happened had happened and what transpired, in that moment when Massey has to make his decision, like you say, there's a number of things there. There's kind of stuff swirling around that external pressures basically said, just do what needs to be done, but don't finish it under safety car. We pumped so much marketing dollars into doing the decider in the desert and the big grandstand finish, and we've got the fireworks ready and everything. No one wants to see it end under safety car. I've got to be honest, in hindsight, I think a hell of a lot of people would have rather seen it finish under safety car than how it did.
Agreed. Although I did hear you say you're watching Latifi's bank account. So we'll look for those Red Bull deposits. All right, let's look at the rest of the week leading up to it. Obviously, we've hit the highlight, but there was a lot more to the week. I'd quick hit a couple of notes, and we're going to have, just for all the new viewers and listeners, and that is everybody, what we're going to do is we're going to talk a lot about things leading up to the race, whether it's social stuff, whether it's fun stuff. We're going to do that first, including practice and qualification, and see where people end up qualifying. We're going to do that kind of first and then hit the race. And so this week, as we look at quali, to me, leading up to everything, we got to talk a little bit about Formula One fantasy. Now, fantasy sports have been huge here in the US for a long time. I've been playing fantasy basketball with friends of mine from college, and I'm not a spring chicken. So we did it back in the day when stats updated the next day. It was online. I mean, the internet had been invented, but just barely. And so Rob and I invite all of you, I guess for next year, for 2022, to join us on the dirty side of the track, Formula One website fantasy. It is fantastic. I did it the whole year this year. I missed the first race. I can say I was always in the top half. And by that, 51% will qualify. But so Rob and I raced in fantasy this week. Rob, why don't you tell everybody how it worked out for you?
Well, I think considering you invited me to it kind of at the last minute.
I pulled a Massey. I put
up a valiant effort, and I think you beat me 148 to 145, which I'm taking as a moral victory, given like you've had the whole season to play with it and understand all the rules, and I just winged it. I was like the Max coming in with my elbows and trying to upset you, you know?
Yeah, moral victories count for how many actual victories? That's right, 0. One note I'd also say is I watch a lot of sort of the YouTube channels of the drivers and the teams and Formula One and other commentators. It's fun, distracting, and I really enjoy it. And we're going to make sure Dirty Side has a good presence, but we're also going to guide you to people who do amazing stuff. And this week I'm going to highlight kind of a low light, if I'm being honest. Kimi had, and by the way, Kimi did win Driver of the Day. I know we're going out of order now. We joked we wanted him to win Driver of the Day. His car, well, whether the brake by wire broke or he just was done, we don't know. But he locked up, left the course. They asked him, so did you listen to the team radio on this one? They asked him, can you continue? And he's like, nah, I don't know. So then they kind of retired the car with his blessing, if you will. So we didn't get to hear them interview him for Drive of the Day, but he won. So Kimi Räikkönen, amazing champion. Was it 07? I think he was the world champion. Had an amazing career, retiring now. And Formula One did a sort of drawn retrospective of his life, an animated retrospective of his driving career. And he narrated it. And it's only like 3 minutes long or something. I was really excited for it. I tune in, and he couldn't have been less happy to be there. It was fantastic. It's like they gave him the script and there was not a lick of emotion. Now, he has a flat voice to start with, but this was the least. I mean, he was like, I could never, I'd rather have heard him gloves and steering wheel, when he's yelling for this. This was the opposite. It's like, and then I did karting, and then I moved on to, I fell asleep in the 3 minutes. So while I'll miss Kimi very much for his dry sense of humor and his focus on himself and nothing to do with Formula One and his, I think, quite honestly, very good driving. We can all agree people would race Kimi in the backfield and he never took it too far. He never went over the line. He was a great driver. But one of the worst things I've ever seen on social media was the Formula One video that he narrated, the animated video of his career retrospective. It could have been so much better if he'd, I don't know, cared.
I mean, what it does highlight, though, is that it feels like this season, and maybe even only the latter half of the season, maybe, is that F1 has started to understand social media.
Mm-hmm.
And when I was a kid growing up, you only really got to know the drivers that won because they were the ones that got to take their helmets off and have the interviews afterwards. All the backfield may as well have been drones because you just didn't know who they were, right? There was no way. And Formula One then became very kind of, you didn't get that kind of bond between you and your favorite driver. You'd have maybe a favorite driver, but only because maybe there was somebody in the backfield who you liked because they were erratic and they were all over the field. But you didn't really know them as a driver, right? And I think one of the things I've really liked this year is that they seem to have got their act together in all the drivers have got an Instagram account. They've all, they're on Twitter. There's huge engagement levels. You're getting all these kind of like little video casts that are being done off at the side during the week. And really and they really cashed in on it this week. If we kind of wind back to Monday after the Saudi, well, we could probably do a podcast on the Saudi episode as well. But they really build it up all week. We've got the Decider in the desert. We've got insights. We've got everything hitting Instagram every day. And I actually think they've done it really well. I think it's probably what's drawn us into this. Is why we're sat here doing this right now. It's why we've got, like you say, our social media presence. So go check out Dirty Side of the Track on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. But
for sure,
it's Formula One really feels like it's in general, not just in the US, but maybe in the US is pun intended here, starting to turn a corner. And from that corner, it feels like it's getting great traction out of that corner. I'm really looking forward to 2022 as to how they kind of build on that.
Totally agree. I think the social media that you reference, in addition to the Drive to Survive that we highlighted already, in addition to the fact it's on in the morning and during quarantine, we were looking for live sports. And I feel like between Drive to Survive, the fact it's on Netflix and you could binge it, the fact that it's 20 drivers, most of whom are young, have personality, are willing to do social components, whether they tweet, whether it's Instagram, whether they're on YouTube. The teams have pretty strong YouTube channels, most of them. I always enjoyed last season's McLaren stuff with Carlos and Carlando. I loved it. If you haven't seen, my 2-second nerdiness, if you haven't seen the Carlando when they go into the movie theater at the end of the season, when Carlos, look at me, I'm British. Carlos, when he's moving to Ferrari and it's been announced and they knew Ricardo's coming in, it is so good. They make fun of Checo for not having a ride. I mean, it is topical. It is funny, and they're Muppets in the movie theater. Anyway, go check it out if you haven't seen it. So, all right, social media aside, let's talk about qualifying this week for the championship decider. Rob, as you looked at it, what were some of the things that you really thought were, important and noteworthy from quali?
I mean, I really thought the pole was going to be super important on this one because despite all the track changes that they promised a better race, something in my gut told me that whoever's got pole, if they get a good start and they get away, they're just going to drive off into the distance because, shame on me for not foreseeing how the race was actually going to end. But yeah, so it was that kind of cat and mouse, very close. I wasn't quite sure which way it was going to go, but it was. I really thought the Max's lockup in Q2 was going to have a much bigger impact than it ended up having.
I thought that was going to be monster. I mean, I was watching it, and I know I texted you, but when he locked up and flat spotted his medium tires, I'm like, oh no. I mean, he's either got to run those square blocks or he's got to rerun something. And I actually thought they might try to rerun mediums and see if he could go a little faster. But they went straight to softs to make sure they could go faster. And then to me, I mean, we've watched Abu Dhabi before. It is not a track where you stay close and pass a lot. And I know they fixed 3 of the corners and they changed some of the hotel pieces and yada, yada, yada. man, I thought that was going to be bigger. And then for me, the thing that really stuck with me from this weekend in terms of teams was Q3. And even during the race, the teamwork of Checo. And so Sergio Perez, when he in Q3 gave that slingshot by, as we'd say in NASCAR, I'm American, I can call it we. But when he gave him that toe and then pulled aside quickly and let Max have just a stonking lap, just amazing lap, just fantastic. To me, that was huge. And, during the race, we'll get to it in a minute, his defense against Lewis was huge. Yeah. And where was Valtteri? Was he looking for porridge? Was he there this weekend? He's a great driver, Valtteri, but when the spotlight is on, he shrinks. And so to me, yes, the lockup was huge, but I'd say the Q3 teamwork from Checo was just amazing.
Yeah. So then, that sets us up then with Max taking pole. And I'm like, okay, but like you say, he's on pole, he's got position, but it's the tire. So now he's got to kind of maybe, what's he going to do? Is he going to disappear off into the distance and just try to build up as much of a gap as possible to earn the pit stop? Or is he going to go into tire management mode right from the beginning? But regardless, he needs to make a good start and be leading into the first corner.
Right. How come? Yeah. And so one last thing for me, and then we'll get to the race, because I want to talk about the start in the first corner and then the fifth corner. Holy cow. How come? And I know the answer is why. It's because it's the championship decider, but Yuki Tsunoda gets no press. Did anyone know Yuki finished fourth? No one knew this. He finished fourth and no one paid attention. He qualified on mediums. Up really high. The only 3 people on medium tires to start the race: Hamilton, Bottas, and Yuki F. Tsunoda. Where did this guy drove a banger of a race. He was amazing. He had a fantastic race. And at the end, for again, all the new listeners, we're going to recap everyone's race. And to me, Tsunoda had one of the under the radar amazing races. And it was awesome. The last thing for me was when they interviewed Lando. And they said, all right, Lando, you got a great starting position. Are you going to, you're third out of quality. Are you going to, get involved, stick your nose into the race? He's like, nah, I don't want to get in the way. I love Lando. I did two, three. Yeah, go ahead.
Once they knew those two were on the front row, it was almost like they should have just moved everyone else back like 2 rows, because no one really wanted to get involved. No one wanted to be that driver that, if the 2 of them make a bad start and you're in third and suddenly you're up alongside them in the first corner, you don't want to be the guy that takes the 2 of them out.
You definitely don't. And so it's funny, like Lando, I've grown to really appreciate him. He was so good the first half of this year, and teaser, our next episode will be a year in recap where we can talk about some of these strengths. When I think in my mind, actually Lando, Carlos, Pierre are going to be some highlights for me at least, but we'll do that in the next episode. So yeah, first, as you said, what happened at the start? How come Max has had so many bad starts recently?
Actually, I don't think it was. I think you've ever played Mario Kart?
Yeah.
Yeah,
all the time. I'm amazing. Did he hold the other button?
He held the button down for long enough time, and he got the turbo start. Is what Hamilton. I don't think it's a bad
you got to start at 2. You're saying at 2 seconds. Lewis put the other button down, and then when it went green, he took off like a rocket. I don't. Exactly. Was he in a? He wasn't Cooper Trooper.
Because it just when they showed when it happened in real time, I was actually worried that Lewis had done a jump start, because on the view where the camera's coming towards you as the lights go out, he just seemed to be moving. To me, anyway, moment that light went out, and I'm like, oh, that's going to be under investigation for a jump start. But when they showed it, I mean, I think he was wasn't he a 1/10 of a second quicker on the reaction time to?
He was a 1/10 of a second quicker, and he was clear at the turn, as he was twice in Saudi Arabia. It was shocking to me how far ahead he was, and that, I don't know, it blew my mind. And then of course it leads to I think it was turn 6. I said turn 5 earlier. It leads to what happened there. And in my mind, Max did not take a racing line into that corner. He took a Daniel Ricciardo late breaker, which they all highlighted late breaking. But what Ricciardo does is he takes the corner in a racing fashion. even if he's coming at it from not on the apex or not at the normal racing line, he still manages to take the corner and allow the other car to complete. What Max did was effectively come to a complete stop in front of Lewis. He cut him off. Use an American term, he just cut him off, and Lewis had nowhere to go. So he bailed out. And instead of slowing down when he really cut the corner, he just put the hammer down, hammer time. And so they said he gave back the advantage. Well, he didn't. I mean, I'm sorry. I'm a Lewis fan. He did not give back the advantage. I don't care what he may have slowed momentarily that we couldn't see. But Max, again, went into a corner too hot, cut someone off, and got no penalty. And everyone's asking about Lewis. I'm like, they said, because Max kept two wheels on the track. Give me a break. If I pulled out onto the highway today, cut someone off like that, but kept my car on it, that no one would accept that as a real move. And to me, what Max did on lap 1, turn 6, was what he's done the whole season. Just get his car a nose in front of someone, no matter how he has to do it, off the racing line, braking too late, can't make the corner. And he puts his elbows out and he chased Lewis off the track. And all the people are like, well, Lewis can't do that. What about what Max did? So to me, that was evident of his over aggressive nature this season. And I thought it was bad. I thought he cut him off.
No, I agree. And I think he's, look, we know that Max always drives on the edge. It's his driving style that's kind of, like I say, when he first came onto the scene, he was shaking people up by, I ain't getting out of the way of you just because you're Alonso or you're Hamilton or whoever you are. I'm here to race, and I've earned my spot here, so I'm going to race you. But I think he will push things to the absolute extreme of the definition of the rule. And I think the FIA again made a rod for their own back here, where they basically almost said, if you keep your car inside the white lines, then that's just racing. And like you say, it's like, okay, so yeah, he kept his car inside the white lines, but in a way that was never going to make the corner. But yeah, and I agree. I think, Lewis went into that corner fractions of a second clear, came out of it like a second and a half clear. I never saw him give that back to being within fractions of a second again, but
What? And the interesting thing is, right, so you and I talked before the race, and as you said, we sort of anticipated the Max taking when he had pole, driving off into the distance and trying to create a pit stop for a two-stopper, when in reality he had like 47 stops because of all the VSCs and safety cars, and he was changing tires more than the guys down at the tire rack are doing. But so to me, he comes out on softs and he couldn't catch Lewis. So like, I recognize we sit here and debate the turn 6 situation on lap 1. He had 15 more laps or 14 more laps where he wasn't even close to catching Lewis on the softs. First, second, third lap. You got to think those things are perfect at that point, or nearly. I mean, he used them for one lap in quali. And so in my mind, Lewis drove a technically pretty much perfect race to pull ahead from Max at that situation and stay ahead. And it was a bummer to me that it didn't mean anything at the end because he got massied.
Yeah, I mean, if we're brutally honest, after that incident at the corner and didn't he give the advantage back, it was a pretty boring race for a big chunk of time, right? And it was intriguing.
Very much so.
It was intriguing to see it play out. And I was the same as you. I was shocked that Max didn't seem to be able to make a dent into Lewis's lead. And if anything, Lewis was pulling away. And then we kind of finally came down to, I think it was the VSC, wasn't it, when Max went in and pitted and they were like, right, here's the charge now. He's got to take 0.8 of a second out from Lewis. And he did it for the first
3 laps.
Three laps. First 3 laps, it was 0.8, pretty much bang on. And then all of a sudden, it was 0.6, it was 0.5, it was 0.3. I don't think Lewis ever went faster than him, but we went into kind of as if both drivers had settled into a dawning realization of Max doesn't have the pace. Max started looking a bit dejected, although here's me really being able to tell the difference between 0.8 of a second as to whether or not Max was looking dejected or not. But he must have known. He must have known that he wasn't making the inroads. And we got to 10 laps out, and I think that's when Christian Horner was interviewed on TV, and he said that we just need a miracle because they're faster than us.
They're faster than us.
And I was actually, the moment he said that, I thought, sport's got a funny way of serving those things up. So I was actually sitting there waiting for the puncher, because Lewis had been warned a couple of times about going over the two of the turns. They were worried about.
Watch the curbs,
because the curbs have been like, they'd angle grind them down to try to make them a bit less severe, but they were still worried. And I think, I can't remember now who it was that had actually suffered with the slow puncture.
Well, Lando had a slow puncture. It was Lando.
Yeah, so I'm thinking, okay, this is what's going to happen, isn't it? We're going to get are we going to get Lewis come around the final corner with like a delaminated wheel flapping around the back, and he's kind of limping across the line, trying to
Silverstone 2020 is what I was waiting for, where he comes around with this thing flapping like this, and his announcer Bono in his ear, 8 seconds to Verstappen, 4 seconds to Verstappen, 1 second. I mean, like, I was waiting for that, and agree with you. Last thing, sorry, just one more note I wanted to highlight. When Nico Rosberg, who was never the bastion of conservatism on the track, I almost got that word right, Nico Rosberg called Max out for too much on that corner, and he was the only one to say it. I'm pumping my arms at 7:15 in the morning, eating my pizza. I'm like, yes, Nico, you're right. So to me, I really struggled a lot with Max's driving this season. And I think I would just reiterate what we said earlier. He was great the whole year in terms of maybe a little over aggressive, but he was fast. He was smart. He was precise. He knew what he was doing. I don't care what anyone says. When he ran Lewis off in Brazil at turn 4, he knew exactly. You could see the onboard, which they didn't have for like 3 weeks.
Well, now we've gone full circle, because now we're coming back to the emotions that I was kind of describing at the beginning when we were talking about the end, which is the great season, great drivers, great events that happened all the way through, which, like you said in the little teaser there, we're going to talk about in the next episode and kind of pick the bones apart from the season. Deserved champion, just not the way any of us wanted it to be.
My last thing for this particular race, and you may have other things that's good, but I just had one thing that I want to hit before we talk about next episode of the season, is the class that Lewis and his dad showed at the end of the race. And what I mean by that, Lewis didn't park next to Carlos and Max, and some people are mad about that, and that's fine. He also wasn't on the radio. He said this was manipulated, man. He was angry. His team engineer comes on and goes, I don't know what to say. I'm so sorry. I don't know what to say. And they basically sat there quiet. And Toto was having a nutty, right? He was going crazy and they're breaking more Bose headsets. Michael, did you read my email? I mean, there was one of those situations again. And to me, Lewis was regrouping, and then you saw him huddling with his dad. And I'm not going to try to get into the mind of a young driver, but I'm just going to tell you that he came out, you could see the tears in his eyes. He walked over and congratulated Max, went up to the podium, stood there, shook Christian's hand, shook Max's hand, congratulated them, participated in the event at the top of the podium, and then walked away. And now people are saying, oh, he didn't do one of his interviews. What? I mean, give me a break. That was the most controversial finish. They took a championship, which is all that matters, from him on the last lap. I thought he was the epitome of class. His dad walks over, shakes Max's hand, shakes Max's dad's hand. Last week in Saudi Arabia, Max didn't like the finish. He grabbed his champagne or rose water, I guess, and walked off the podium as fast as he could. So to me, I think that's something that comes with age. And I say that as an old person. But to me, I think Max will be there eventually. He seems like a good dude. He definitely deserved the championship. Kudos to him. But to me, at the end, when I turned off for the third time watching that race, to me, I took in my mind the class of Sir Lewis.
Well, it's what we do. It's what the British do, right? So, but no, I mean, it's a really good lesson. And there's a lot of focus on kind of being gracious in victory. And when I look at kind of all the penalties being given out for taunting in NFL at the moment, like they're trying to, you've got to be gracious in victory. You can't be kind of taunting the opposition. This is the opposite. This is gracious in defeat. This is knowing how to, because it's got to be the most, I'm mid-40s and I still can't stand it when I lose a game of soccer in the weekend. I don't want to talk to anybody when I come home. And that's just a pointless over 40s league that really doesn't matter at all. But it matters to me. And because it matters to me, I can be in a really bad mood and not want to speak to anybody. I can't even imagine what that becomes when you multiply that by not just going for a world championship, going for the 8th, being
Record
out
breaking.
on your own as being the single most talented, maybe not talented because that's up for debate, but at least having the most championships in your locker. And on kind of my last wrap up of this race before we maybe preview next week is that the only silver lining, because I'm an optimist. I like to see the good in things, like even your impressions of Toto.
I'm an optimist, says the guy who's not an optimist. Okay.
I'm an optimist. I'm an eternal optimist, and I think that you're going to work on your impressions and get them better in the future.
No, they're going to be this bad the whole time forever.
But the thing that I do believe, is I was worried there was a chance that if Lewis had got the 8th, that he would have walked and not had the passion and the desire to come back for number 9. I can't see anything but the competitive fires being completely restoked in that guy now to want to come back next year in the new car, the new regs, the new everything, and take that crown back from Max. So if for the dust will settle on this, we'll all come to terms with what the hell we watched last weekend. But I think it sets us up really nicely for next year, because I think there could have been a chance that he might have just called time on it.
I actually would disagree. I think there's an actual real chance he may call time on it now. And the reason I say that is who was it, Jensen, who was doing the interviews, asked him some question about being ready for next year. He goes, yeah, we'll see. Like, I know he was pissed and in the moment, but I actually don't think this would agreed. He's an all-time competitor. He's a GOAT. He is one of the best ever to race in Formula One or in any sport, do what they do. With the new cars coming out next year, with the sort of hopefully more level pegging for all the teams, where we don't have, 2 here, 2 here, 2 here, and everyone in the toilet at the bottom, where we actually have racing, I could see Lewis saying, you know what, I've done enough. And if I'm going to get screwed out of my best year in a long time, why put it in when it's more even? When my car is no longer the rocket ship it was at the end of the year for me to catch up and lap everyone 75 times in Brazil. Because if anything, I worry a little more. And I know I'm a competitor too, man. I run a bowling league. I've got multiple championships in bowling. And sometimes it's not even bowling. And my point is, I'm always there for more. But Lewis has enough money. He has enough wherewithal to have causes outside of Formula One that he cares about. And to me, I think if he walked in, I'm making this number up, okay? If he had a 10% chance of not coming back next year, I don't think it went down. I think it went up.
Okay, well, yeah, that's nice that we can have a disagreement on the first episode. That sets up the spice between us for the rest of this, right?
Well, you're just wrong, but okay.
Well, I think that competitive spirit that lifts those, whatever he was, 7-year-old lad getting into karting, that has been part of his DNA ever since. All the money you've got, all the championships you've got, you can't turn that piece off. And I think that competitive spirit that has driven him all this time is not going to want to rest being level with Michael Schumacher. And
I hope you're right, because I'm a Lewis fan. So anyway, let's close this week with ratings of the drives that we saw and then give a quick preview for next week. So quickly, as we go through, let's go by finish. Max first. I gave him a 9 out of 10. I thought his race was very good. That lap 1, turn 6 incident turned me off, that cutting him off. But otherwise, I would have liked him to have been faster, but man, he was spot on at the end. I got to give him a near perfect. I give him a 9.
I'm going to let you go through your scoring, then I'm going to let you know what happened to me. So you push on with yours, and then I'll reveal mine.
Max 9, Lewis 10. I gave him a perfect score. He literally did what you expected him to drive off into the distance, except we thought Max was going to do it. Lewis did it. I know the team said, let's not give up track position. Again, as I said earlier, I think that's the right decision. I'm excited. I thought he did a great drive. He did nothing wrong. He had this thing in the bag until he got massied. Carlos, I'd give an 8. We will talk about him next week. As we said, we're going to do a season review. Carlos Sainz, second half of the year, I don't know how you can beat him. He had 75 races in a row with points. I mean, the guy's amazing. Plus, he's a horrible singer. And if I could get my little sound buttons to work, I'd do a smooth operator. Yuki, I give an 8 as well. Again, we talked about it. He popped up in the middle of nowhere in quali on yellow striped medium tires and then finished 4th in the chaos at the end. And he had a rough year. He started off with all the hype and all the hope. And I know there was a lot of people down on him, and he screwed up a lot in Mexico and other places. But to me, it was an 8. Pierre, next 7. I loved watching him race this year. He was, for me, and we'll talk more about this next. He was Mr. Saturday for the last half of the year. He really qualified the heck out of that AlphaTauri. Loved it. Valtteri, 4. Man, I like Valtteri. He seems like a great dude, but he was bad as a teammate when they really needed it. And this was a good weekend example. He wasn't there in quali. He wasn't there in the race. Where was he? And then the Mercedes, he can't get the Mercedes to go through traffic, but Lewis goes through 47 people. Okay. Anyway, Lando, I give a 7. Slow puncture, not really his fault. He got caught out by the safety car, the VSCs. He got kind of hosed. But he started 3rd. I expect more from Lando. He's a great driver, and I look for more. Fernando, I gave a 6 out of 10. Just struggled with the car. Didn't seem comfortable. He didn't set the world on fire. He's better than average, but not great. Esteban, behind him, same car. I gave a 5. If I gave Fernando 6, I gave Esteban a 5. Interesting year for Esteban. Big contract, horrible for a while. And again, we'll get into this next week. I promise I'll say it the last time I say that. Won in Hungary in that crazy race, but I really would have liked to have seen more pace, more push, a little more elbows out. Not as much as Max, but a little more. I know Max and Esteban have history. Anyway, Charles, I love Charles. He's amazing. I gave him a 5. Man, was he in the race? What happened? I didn't even know Leclerc was racing anymore at the end. And then he even said on the radio, he's like, yeah, I don't know. It was whatever. Seb, I gave a 5, maybe a 6. I don't know. I did not like Seb last year at the end of his time at Ferrari. I thought he handled it poorly. I thought it went down poorly. Obviously coming over to the pink Mercedes, to the Tracing Point, to now Aston Martin, they really got hosed by the standards, and their cars were horrible this year. I thought he handled it well. I loved what he did this year. It felt like Seb turned a corner to me. Again, we'll talk more. But
I'm going to red flag your ratings if you keep giving away your season.
All right. Daniel,
come on.
Daniel 4. Again, was he in the race? I didn't notice. Lance 4. He was worse than Seb. He finished below Seb. Come on, Lance. We expect more. Mick, I gave a 5. How in the world is a Haas battling anyone on lap 52 on the same lap? That car must just be dog-esque, because this is dog eggs. Mick did a great job keeping that thing in contention. They actually said it was his best race of the year over the team radio. And I agree. Mick was in it. He was fighting. It was great. And then the people who didn't finish, Checo, I gave an 8. I should probably give a 9. Best team, what he did holding Hamilton up, it was not dirty. It was maybe a little aggressive, but it was not dirty. It was, in my mind, amazing. And it's a lost art. I thought the only person on the grid who knew to play defensive was Fernando. Apparently Checo's got it too. He knows how to manage tires, how to play defense. Everyone in the first half, he was great. Checo was great. Latifi, I gave it 2. Should have given a 1. He pulled a Latifi. It'll forever be known. He ruined the entire race for the title deciders by deciding to race a Haas with 6 laps left in the title. That was ridiculous. And then some more non-finishers. Antonio, 4, we'll miss you. George, a 4. What the hell happened in the second half of the year? He disappeared after Spa. And then Kimi, I gave a 4 because he finished as well, driver of the day. So to me, Lewis and Max were the cream of the crop. And then you got to look at Charles and Yuki after that.
Okay. And the reason I let you go and take yours forward is because I didn't do mine. I was all prepared. I knew that we were going to sit down and we were with the vision of making this first episode. So I was pumped, I was psyched, I was taking notes, I was ready, and I was going to do my sit back and reflect. After it's all finished, and I'd go down and score them. I was so numb after what I just watched. I never went back to that piece of paper. I changed channels, I watched different sport, and I was kind of F1'd out for Sunday. And I never went back to that piece of paper. And I only remembered that we were supposed to be scoring when we sat down for the pre-show get-together to decide what we were going to discuss. And you said, and then we'll finish on our drivers' ratings. I was like, yeah, we will.
Right, yeah, right. The optimist forgot to do his homework. I love it. Hey, so, you know,
thanks for actually giving us something to talk about there, Brian. Because
we can look at it and review. But to me, what's exciting is next year, 2022, when we do this and we have regular race reviews and we look at each driver and we talk about where they finish, we'll be able to tally these up. And while the Formula One driver standings will be based on actual objective finishes. We will have subjective scores here that we will make look objective by doing it over the entirety of the year, and it'll be a lot of fun. So I guess next week we will, or the next podcast at least, we'll talk about the season in review, and we'll get into each of those drivers, how they did, what we're looking forward to, say goodbye to those who leave us and welcome those we don't know anything about, and we'll have some fun. So Rob, close us out, buddy.
Well, yeah, I'm looking forward to it. Next week, I think we're going to take that alternative look down the season. We'll probably stay away from the Max and Lewis story a little bit. I mean, there'll be some sprinklings in there, but I agree with you. I think there's a whole bunch of other drivers and incidents that deserve kind of just one last look at 2021 in the rearview mirror before we start getting our heads around all the rule changes and the funky new cars. And I'm really looking forward to this. This is going to be awesome. So hopefully people listen to it and people enjoy it as much as at least we enjoy just talking to each other about this kind of stuff. So yeah, looking forward to it. So I'm not really sure how we do an outro. So I guess we just say thanks for listening and bye.
Thanks for listening. Have a great day, everybody. Be well. Bye.